And welcome to another episode of Back to Paranormal, or what some of the audience is calling it, What's Your Drink Tonight? My name is Brian Mitchell, and right next to me is my co-host,
Marjorie.
Marjorie, you're looking wonderful tonight.
Thank you.
I like what you're wearing.
Oh, thank you very much.
Very nice.
Well, I like to look nice in the studio.
Well, tonight on the Paranormal Podcast, the Back to Paranormal Podcast, we are finally getting to something we've been plugging for the last 3 months. And that is...
True Irish ghost stories, folks.
Thank you. Anyway... So, this is a book that was written in right about the turn of the century. Not this century, the last century. 1914. And it was actually updated about 11 years later in 1925. Mm-hmm. 1925. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you must have screwed that up.
No, by Reverend John Seymour.
Yes, and Harry L. Nelligan. I said that right.
Well, he needed Nelligan's help to really go through, much like Hello from Heaven.
Yeah.
Where they kind of sent out like, a call to arms, if you will, like submit your stories.
Yeah.
He needed a lot of help going through the stories that were sent to him.
Apparently, he got a whole flood of stories for the first edition of it, and then they updated it because there were stories that came in afterwards, and then he reached out again to get other people to send in their stories.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to say is, he says in the opening of this book, okay, before they start any of the stories, he believed these stories to be true. So I guess there was a little bit of vetting going on to make sure that they were kind of believable.
I think they picked the ones that were the most credible seeming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much like Hello from Heaven,
Yeah.
But that meant they had a lot to do, a lot of work.
Before we start, what are you drinking tonight?
What I thought was, yes, okay. I have created, because we went through the Dark and Stormy. I had planned the Dark and Stormies for the True Irish Ghost Stories podcast, folks, because, Dark and Stormy. But then we decided, let's just drink the Dark and Stormy for the Sasquatch. And if you listen to that, then you kind of get an idea of what a Dark and Stormy is, what it does.
Right.
So I had to come up with something else for this one, and I have been making this delicious organic lemonade.
Yes, it's very delicious.
I think it's wonderful. It's because I cannot do the fresh lemons for 2 quarts of lemonade. I use Italiano Vulcano.
Lemons.
Delicious organic lemon juice. It is so good.
Yeah.
And boy, does it pack a pucker.
It does. Really good.
And
but you did something more to this than just
I did.
Just
we made friends with vodka. We made
put some vodka
they
in
became friends inside the cup.
So that's what. So what do you call this concoction?
I don't know. I've never made it before. Vodka sour. That's so
Well, you should have your name in there. It should be like Marjorie's Old Time Organic Lemonade with Basil and
I
vodka.
threw in a basil garlic for aromatic.
Or you could shorten
I
that.
don't know. I've never made it before tonight, so
Organic spiked lemonade. Marjorie's organic spiked lemonade.
How about just limonato italiano alla vodka?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's yummy, and you have it in what is it?
I'm pretty sure I'm not the first damsel to put a little vodka in her lemonade, so we don't have to give my name. I don't want to be impertinent.
Okay, so these are in what do you call these? Mule mugs, or yeah, with a nice stainless steel straw.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And they are it's what that, hence all the clanking.
Yeah.
Want to boop me?
Yeah, here.
Let's boop.
Dun dun dun.
Boop.
Okay, I got to pay somebody for that bit of music. All right.
So anyway, this is a really amazing book. The first thing that I thought was so amazing, this Reverend John Seymour,
Yes.
actually has a book. He's a Protestant pastor, and he wrote a book prior to this book titled Irish Witchcraft and Demonology.
Wow.
And it was published in October of 1913.
Wow.
And I just find that, and I think that the thing that led him then to the True Irish Ghost Stories book
Right.
was that in his research for witchcraft and demonology, he realized a lot of people would get involved in lawsuits.
Yeah.
Suing someone whom they deemed to be a witch or performing, I don't know, demonic, I don't know.
Or anything that was deemed like
Yeah.
out of the ordinary, something that...
Right. And some of these things actually went to like a court of law.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting is that a Protestant would even entertain, because I'm a Protestant and I don't believe in demons. And I think it's interesting that he wrote a whole book on it. But then one thing led to another, and he realized now we need to do another iteration of this. And he reached out to people for their ghost stories. Some of them go back quite a long way.
Like the early...
Yeah.
I think somewhere like around 1776 there was one, and but not in America, in Ireland.
In Ireland,
yeah.
And he gets a lot from the 19th century, the 18th century, the 17th century.
Well, a lot of these things were passed down, and so I think the second edition he got more first-hand accounts from people, but then those earlier ones were passed down from one generation to another, and then he was able to compile the book from that.
Well, I think especially with the haunted houses ones, because this person lived there, and they experienced this, and then the next person experienced the same thing, and on
right
over the years. But I think from what I read, I think the oldest fright stories go back to the chapter on the Banshees.
Yes. Well, the Banshee... Okay, so there's a Banshee. There's no leprechaun chapter in here.
There's no leprechaun chapter.
Yeah, because that's not considered... Well, some people consider them kind of like, these otherworldly characters, right? But I don't think...
There are plenty of books in Irish literature about the fairies and the sprites and the, and that kind of thing. And
Right. And I think they touch on a little bit of that here, but nothing about... So if you're expecting a book about leprechauns, forget about it.
It's not. It's ghost. It's why they call it True
Irish Ghost Stories. Yes. Well, that's good. Did you like... have you had anything happen to you that's like a ghost story? Or maybe...
Yes.
Or something passed down?
I have had several things, as you know, happen. I do know that my great-grandmother, who would never, ever, ever fabricate or tell a lie, she woke up in my mother obviously was her nan, told her this story. My mother told me this story.
Oh, okay.
She woke up in the middle of the night and looked down at the foot of her bed, and she saw her best friend, who was also her next door neighbor,
Oh,
and walk through one side of her bedroom and right out the other wall,
wow.
and
wow.
kind of lingering at the foot of the bed, and then walked out the other side. And Nana turned to her husband, and she woke him, and she said, this woman has passed away.
Yeah.
And she just knew that she was gone.
She knew that then. Okay.
And then, and then the next day they found out that was what happened in the night.
That's interesting because
There are
there's
a lot of those kinds of stories in here.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm pounding on the book.
It wasn't somebody knocking on the door and nobody there,
I'm beating on it like it's a Bible. Sorry.
That is there's multiple accounts of that in this book.
Yes.
Of that happening. And I've had family members that, like my mother, saw like a cousin.
Yes.
That walked into a room. It was a room full of people, and not maybe a teenager. And everybody's saying, "What are you doing here?" They heard that he was in the hospital miles away.
In Vietnam.
No, that's something else.
Oh.
No, they actually saw him in the room, and then they're asking him why he's there. That we thought you're in the hospital. And then he started to fade away.
Oh, my word.
In front of them. Yeah, so, and my mother witnessed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was this back in Puerto Rico, or was this here?
Probably, I think Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the whole family was there?
Well, not the whole family. Just, but it was a gathering of other family members. And
do you think that might have been there, that his being ill and in the hospital was weighing on them, and their, as a family, their collective conscience that summoned him? No.
And what's funny about that story is...
No, I'm not saying they fabricated anything.
No, I don't think... No.
Okay.
I think that was him saying, see ya.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. And, a lot of people were witness to it. So, and that story is in this book.
Yeah, there are several different chapters, and one of them deals with what's the name of that chapter?
I don't know.
I'm trying to find it. Well, it's apparitions at or after death.
Yes.
Yeah. So your story and my Nana's story are the same. Yeah. And
pretty much, yeah.
And
same
yes,
type of thing.
I did. I lost when I was much younger, my fiance passed away. Yeah. And it was devastating. And right around just shortly after it happened, I one night was so distraught and so upset. Yeah. And I was just inconsolable, and I called one of his best friends. We'll just call him D. Okay. And I was crying, and he didn't know how to console me, and I said, D, I'm sad because he's with you. And he called me M, and he said, I gotta go, and I'll call you tomorrow. I'm so sorry. And he hung up. Right. And he called me the next day, and he said, when you said that, I was at my dinner table with a whole bunch of our friends. Right. And I had candles all over the table. I was making a nice dinner for my friends. Right. And when you said he's with you, all the candles went out.
Holy moly. Mm-hmm. You never told me that one.
I didn't tell you that one.
Wow. That's chilling. I got goosebumps.
I have goosebumps. I just knew, because I felt right after I just...
And it's funny, you just said it. Yep. This just came out of nowhere.
I was crying, and then I said... Yeah.
It's like
he's with you.
It's almost like he said it through you.
It's almost like he said it through me. Yeah. And then, and that's why he just suddenly hung up the phone. Yeah. Well,
you spooked.
I spooked him. No, you didn't. By the way, I'm really sorry about that.
No. No, it's.
I am.
No, there is something about, and I don't know if this was this. It's an interesting story. It's actually from a scientist where there were experiments done where they split. I don't think it was an atom. I think it was like some other. What is it? Proton? Is that something?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So
yeah.
they were able to split it, and then basically they separated it maybe 20 miles away. And whatever they were doing to the one, the other one was feeling
Wow.
it. Yeah, the other one
Amazing.
was reacting. And so there's a belief that we're all connected. Mm-hmm. And I believe that because I'll be texting you, and even before I send the text, all of a sudden ring, and you'll call me. And it's, through, and I could be 100 miles away. I'm sure I could be 10,000 miles away. Mm-hmm. It would be the same thing. Mm-hmm. It would be, I'd be texting, you'd be calling, or we'd both be calling each other at the same time. And it's not like we're on the phone. It's
I don't have the time. I know.
Yeah.
I say to some of my friends, I'm like, how do you call your husband? How do the two of you talk like 5,000 times a day? What do you get done? And I have friends who say my mother calls me at least 30 times a day.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love my mother. Okay.
Yeah.
And I love you.
Thank you.
I
I
don't
love you
have
too.
the time for that.
Yeah.
I really don't have the time. And
Right.
and it is like I won't talk to you for several hours, and then I'm like, I want to know how he's doing, you
Yeah.
know.
Mm-hmm.
And then bing, I'll get.
A text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's almost like you've heard me thinking.
It's telepathy or some sort of communication.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that is very similar to a lot of the work that
That is in this
Mr.
book.
Seymour, yes,
Yeah.
but he references the work of a Professor Bennett throughout the course of this book.
And who was Professor Bennett?
Professor William Fletcher Bennett was an English physicist, and he wrote tomes and tomes on science in his studies. But as he started to follow the spiritualism movement in England, and in mostly English-speaking countries around the Edwardian era, Victorian and Edwardian era, it started to really take off. Mm-hmm. He started to apply his scientific rigor and the scientific method to the investigations of the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And so this book that Seymour, he thanks, it's the Proceedings of the Society for Psychical Research. Mm-hmm. And one of the members of that society was this Professor Bennett, who was a physics professor at Dublin College.
Right.
And again, the science looking at things that are paranormal, aka normal.
Right. Yeah.
Is like what you're talking about right
Wow.
there with those atoms that are divided.
There's a lot of weird stuff that happens in real life that nobody can explain. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people believe that, when you leave your body, when you die, you're just transitioning to another realm. But they believe that spirit, that soul, right, that is in you, you're part of God. And so it's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, it is. So there's a lot of interesting stories. There's a couple of chapters in here on haunted houses in different areas of Ireland. And one interesting story that I thought was really kind of fun is about this spirit that he doesn't really appear to people that are not afraid of him. If you go, so in this house they had servants, and he liked to kind of spook the servants, and so he would talk to them. They would all hear him, and he would do things. He would hide things. It was very much.
Mischievous.
Yeah, almost like a poltergeist, but no, he was very present in the house, and he would talk to them and spook them, and his name was Corny, which maybe that's where that name came from. I don't know.
No, it's more Cornelius.
Yeah, but anyway, these people they lived in the house and they tolerated him, and the servants were basically down on the main floor. They just wanted to get away from him, so they moved all the way up to the top of the house, practically the attic of the house. And so they went to move like their beds and move it up there, and as soon as they moved it up there, all of a sudden they heard him, you can't escape me. I can move freely anywhere in the house, And so, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of like what happened. But it was a very interesting story in here. A lot of very neat stories, haunted houses. There's one in particular that I thought was really kind of funny, where it's this old lady. This person moved into the house. It was her and her husband moved into the house, and she would hear this footsteps coming down, and she might be in the living room or the dining room or whatever, and all of a sudden she would appear to her, and she would just stand there, not saying anything, not doing anything, and she would get frightened. And then she would slowly fade. But she saw her in every room of the house. Is
this the Char woman?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was a particularly frightening read. Most of these stories are not very long. They're only
some of them are long and some of them are just harmless enough. Some of them seem actually really pretty harrowing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Especially the ones on the haunted road.
Yeah. There's one like that. There's some guy on the road, and he's walking, and it's particularly muddy out, and there's somebody behind him, and not close enough to recognize who the person is, but somebody, he sees him. And so he's going on. He passes by this woman, and, he just keeps on going, and he turns around. The guy's still there. He's just following him, kind of a weird thing. Yeah. So finally he loses him, and he sees the lady the next day, and he goes, "Do you know who that person was that was behind me?" And she said, "What person? What are you talking about?"
Interesting.
She said, "There was nobody behind you."
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very.
And they found out later that was actually, I think, a relative of the woman that he talked to that passed away. Yeah. So a lot of these experiences in the book happened to a third party.
They did. I found that point very interesting.
Yeah.
It's well, why are you going to them instead of, to your most nearest and dearest?
Yeah.
I wonder what that...
I don't know.
But they make that point throughout the book.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's a fascinating book to read. Some of the stories are short and sweet, so you really get a lot of the experiences.
Yeah. Short and sweet meaning like a paragraph.
Some of them are just 3 paragraphs. Some of them are more than a page.
Yeah.
But it's not something that you, much like Hello from Heaven, it's not something that one has to devote their entire evening to reading from cover to cover. You can keep it on your nightstand or whatever, the side table, and pick it up and put it down, and it's entertaining. In just a couple minutes.
It would be good to have a little have your phone nearby, so if an expression comes up, they talk about to let, right? To let. Room to let, which is basically to rent.
Very old-fashioned. I mean, it's not in old English. You wouldn't be able to. I mean, the last time I read Old English was Canterbury Tales.
Yeah.
In high school, it's a very oldsy, timesy Irish language. There's some words that are hard if you don't understand much of Gaelic, which most people don't. You find a hard time pronouncing some of the words, and that's totally fine. That's not the point. Some of the material is a little hard to get through because it's these very elaborate, descriptive, and very Irish, true to form, dramatic language that's old worldly and very long run-on sentences. And I, myself being a very slow reader, I always have been, I would have to go all the way back to the beginning of the sentence and be like, wait, where did we start off with that again?
Yeah, I'm a little, I think I read a little bit faster than you do, but I think
everybody reads faster.
No. I think what happened here, because of the way this is written, because this is written like turn of the century Irish, right? So I go through and I read it, and it's almost like, okay, I actually had to go back to really get the full flavor and just slow down. And I should just slow down at the beginning, just taking it in. But no, I found myself going back into it to reread some of this stuff to really get the full flavor.
And you make a very good point, Brian, when you say keep your phone nearby, because if you're a younger person of today, I mean, like most younger folks today don't know what a lodger is, you know, like
right.
What?
Right.
Think little things like that. And
yeah, you can kind of figure it out or look it up.
Yeah.
If you just read between the lines, you can kind of figure it out. But
it's not so oldsy-timesy that it's going to impede your enjoyment of the stories, because they really are very interesting. And
there's some that are terror-filled. There's some
of them are really, really scary.
Yeah. No, some of them really... and, I'll read this stuff and I'll just be like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting, and then you get the one that's just like, ooh, that's blood-curdling.
Yes.
So it has lighthearted ghost stories. And like the one I was telling of Corny, which is basically, to me, that's lighthearted. This is a playful ghost in the house that's letting everybody know he's there.
There is a chapter on poltergeists in this.
Well, I don't think he's really a poltergeist. I think he's just, he wants to have fun. That's his idea of having fun.
He's a minxy hoaxer.
He is. They ended up moving out of the house. There was somebody else that wanted the house. And so that person rented the house.
There are a lot of people who move out of their homes in true Irish ghost stories.
And the person that rented the house, they were only there for like 6 months, and then they were like, what's interesting is a lot of the explanations, because at the time when this was written, people would think, they would think things of, if somebody said the house was haunted, they would, be looked down upon as maybe crazy, right? So a lot of the people there was one particular house in this book that they were talking about where people moved in and then they moved out, or somebody went mad in the house,
right?
Because of what was going on. They couldn't handle it. And so the house would be constantly, it would be closed up, and then it would be rented. Yeah. And then, but a lot of the explanations, like if somebody suddenly moved out of the house, it would be like, well, I don't like the rooms.
That kept coming.
And that kept coming up.
Yes.
Yeah.
It did keep coming up.
Yeah.
This unwillingness to say, there's so many people who have these very extreme reactions to whatever it is that's going on inside this house,
right?
That doesn't belong to them.
Yeah.
But that they leave, and they so few of them actually come clean and say what the reason is. That it's almost as though so many of these people who have these experiences in this book didn't want to really come out and say, because it would make it more real.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before on podcasts.
We have.
Where people don't want to acknowledge the fact that, even today's day and age, oh yeah, no, something happened, and yeah, it's fine. It was just a coincidence, and blah blah blah, And the same thing's happening here, but they're just not, they're using that explanation. And maybe they talk to people and say, just tell them that you didn't like the rooms, or the house was too creaky, some explanation. But it seemed that comment, we didn't like the rooms, So it was that code at the time, like, don't rent this out. Yeah, the code.
The safe word.
I know. What are the other chapters in here? Let's see. We got,
Okay.
What we got? Okay, so...
Haunted places was interesting. That's
Yeah.
like anything outside of a house. There you have several chapters on haunted houses. In or near Dublin.
Right.
In Conshalf, in Mogshalf.
Right.
And you have a chapter on haunted places. So that's everything that's outside the houses. So like
Right.
a field, a forest, a road.
Cemetery.
A cemetery.
Right.
Exactly.
There's a chapter about Banshees, which I found very, very weird. And there's a movie called Darby O'Gill and the Little People, where it's a Disney film.
I knew it was going to come up.
It was going to come up. And so anyway, there's a banshee in the movie that's chasing after old Darby O'Gill.
Oh, Darby.
So if you don't know what a banshee is, banshee... In the way they explain it in this book is somebody. It's a figure, a supernatural figure.
Usually a form of a woman.
Woman. She comes. She's wearing a robe. She's wailing, right? Loud, waving her arms and just going back and forth. Very scary stuff.
Keening, wringing her hands.
Right in front. Exactly.
Tearing out her hair.
Tearing out her hair in front of a house.
No, it's usually on a rock. It's usually near.
It's near
a rock formation.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the connection is with rocks. It could be a ruin of castles,
right?
But it's very often associated with geological formation.
But it's always by a house where somebody's going to die.
It's a portent of death.
Yes.
She is a death warner.
And according to the stories here, she doesn't appear to the person who's actually going to die. It's a family member. And it's basically, it's like the raven. It's like the raven comes down and black raven.
Mm-hmm. The old man on the horse.
What is it? The foretelling of somebody passing away. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the same type of thing.
In the South, we say don't let the old man in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's basically, they don't call him, just death, right? They don't call him Father Death. It's not Father Death.
Father Time.
No, that's Father Time.
The Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper. It's like the Grim Reaper, but the Grim Reaper is a guy, I think.
Okay, this is the Grim Reaper's wife.
So anyway, they have a whole bunch of stories of the Banshee.
And some of the Banshees are famous.
They are.
This I had no idea. Okay,
Mick Jagger.
We have in my family had this little summer cottage, and our nanny at that cottage, who was the best. She was basically a descendant of the Little People. She was from Ireland. She was 4 foot nothing.
Right.
She had arms like Popeye.
Wow.
And she had this big tuft of orange head on top of her. Hair on top of her head.
Right.
And she was actually like the only human alive who would actually spar with my father.
Wow.
And
who got the better?
Well, she knows, he who holds the purse strings. And let me tell you that you couldn't get more opposite. My dad was like a Viking. He was this huge dude. But nothing scared this little girl, okay? She was just tough as they come. And when my mom would lose her temper, Teresa would go, her name was Teresa Giedlich, and she had she usually had to ask her 2 or 3 times, come again, because the accent was so thick that I couldn't understand. Mm-hmm. And she would come and say, get upstairs, your mother's screaming like a banshee. And we'd be like, oh boy, oh no. We know whatever that is bad. It's bad. We didn't know what a banshee was.
Right.
But apparently, according to Teresa, my mom was one. But she would say screaming like a banshee.
Oh.
We knew that someone was in real big trouble, so we would have to go up and tend to that. But now reading about it...
But we love your mother.
We do.
Yes.
No, we do.
Yes.
But, the temper
Right.
is there. Apparently, Teresa
The
was
old Irish temper.
the only one allowed in the Stewart household to lose her temper. But now reading this chapter on Banshees, because I as I grew older, I learned, peripherally what a banshee was supposed to be, and a wailing woman portending someone's demise. And now I've read this chapter. Some of these banshees are actually like famous. There's one who's like the oldest, and her name is Ivul. Ivul. And I hate to break it to you, Brian, but she haunted the ancient Irish king in 1014, Brian Boru, and he was of the clan of the House O'Brien.
Oh, wow.
And Ivul came to him, and he knew that there was a battle coming up that he had to fight, and he knew when he saw her, he was like, well, I ain't coming home alive, so...
Yeah. Oh, so he appeared... She appeared to him. She appeared
to King
pretty
O'Brien.
Much let him know, give it the old 1-2.
You're getting the heave-ho.
You're getting the heave.
Boy-o. Yeah, basically.
It's too bad.
I know, poor Brian O'Brien.
Well, when was that?
1014.
Oh, there you go. Anyway, there's a lot of...
But Ivul was like the Kim Kardashian of the ancient banshees. She was famous.
Famous Banshee.
Famous Banshee.
The Kardashian Banshee.
Kardashian Banshee.
Yeah. Well, interesting.
They have this in other cultures, like the woman in white.
Right.
And it frightens people, and it means that there's a death coming, or in North African countries and Arab countries, they call it the Jinn.
Yes.
That means like time's up.
Yeah.
Hashtag time's up.
Yeah. So it's like Father Time here.
Yes.
Your time's out. Yeah. Well, it's Father Death.
The Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper. I knew that.
I know.
I was just playing with you.
The boatman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess each culture has something.
Not mine.
Not yours? Nothing?
No.
Really?
No.
Oh.
Because we don't want anything that's going to make us... we don't believe in fear.
Oh, okay.
That's like your greatest hope is to be brave.
I don't know if that's something to be fearful of. I think that's kind of like, like
Darby O'Gill wasn't terrified of the Banshee.
It's a terrifying
part
of it. Yeah. Darby O'Gill.
Darby.
Yes. All right. So, is there anything else that struck you?
I like the language. It's a slight challenge if you're younger and you didn't really, grow up with older versions of the English language. But I think it's a worthwhile challenge because it's really entertaining, and just the fact that you have this reverend taking it upon himself to, and he received like fan mail.
He did.
From Irish folk who were like, I've been at, like, there was one gentleman who wrote him, and they were like, I've been after a book of such a sort.
Right. What's your beef about the book? You could ask me that if you want. What's my beef about the book? I'm going to have a beef.
I do know you're going to.
Yeah. I
didn't have anything that got my knickers in a twist. Okay, folks? Not this crack.
Well, I don't.
But
I don't want to say I have my knickers in a twist.
No, but you usually have a beef or multiple beefs. Beefs.
Where's the beef? Yeah. No, I wouldn't say it's a beef. It's just that, I think because of the time, they identify a lot of the people, Mr. F from, C, meaning the town.
Yeah.
And his wife, Mrs. R, or whatever.
OG.
Yeah. No, I mean, it gets a little confusing.
Mr. D.
Mr.
OG.
OG, yeah.
Saw a banshee.
That's right. No, I'm just talking about in general.
Ensuring their complete anonymity.
Yeah.
I just told a very personal story about a feeling of a visitation, post-mortem visitation.
Right.
Someone very dear to me, and I won't use his friend's first name out of respect.
Right.
So, yes, it's a little frustrating. I think the thing that makes that frustrating, the anonymity and the blank lines, is it's hard to follow who's the subject of that sentence. You have to kind of go back and do your checks because there are no names.
Yeah, you have to go back and forth to kind of figure it out. I had to do that on one particular page.
I did
of
too.
The book.
So yeah,
and I was like,
guess,
wait a minute, and I had to go back and kind of go through it.
And then you're like, oh, the wife of Mr. Blank went to Mr. Blank.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, yes, it was a little annoying, but I don't think if it was a beef, it's just out of respect to.
I've read
maintain anonymity.
I was looking at some of the reviews of the book, and one of the reviews was this was on Amazon, and somebody purchased this book, and for some reason they printed a different book for the cover. So the book was all about cheese, and he was like, "This is a horrible book. It's all about cheese. It has nothing to do with Irish ghost stories." I'm like, you probably got a bad print of this book, or they put the wrong cover on it or something. But generally,
I like books about cheese.
Well, yeah, but we're doing
I like cheese.
We're doing true Irish ghost stories. We're talking about. Anyway, it wasn't a very expensive book. It was we didn't spend a whole lot on this, and this book is available. I think you can get like paperback easily under $10 for this book. It's chock full of stuff, and a lot of it.
I think you can read it free online.
You might be able to. Yeah, because it's such an old book.
So old.
It's 100 years old, over 100 years old, this book. I mean, it's coming up on 100 years for the newer edition, which was in, 1925. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm still going to read it. I'm still going to go back and read some of this stuff. What about you?
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Poltergeist chapter particularly. The way that they're telling these stories with the language, I found a lot of the stories amusing, but then I kind of had to check myself and say, wait a minute, if this were actually happening, you've got 3 guys trying to hold down a bed, 3 full-grown men trying to hold down a bed, and it's bouncing across the room.
Wow.
And another thing about the Poltergeist chapter was so many of the stories were like almost like practically following the blueprint from, that movie The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
With Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn.
Burstyn, yeah.
Yeah. It's all following that blueprint. They had started like, oh no, we have rats in the attic. Go put some rat
traps,
acid, poison up there, and then the disturbances get bigger, and then people start doing really weird things, and then furniture is starting to dance all over, and and I mean, it was like these things were happening to these people over 100 years before that movie was made.
Yeah, I don't doubt, because this is such an old book.
Don't. No.
Yeah, that, probably when they were researching and trying to come up with ideas for things,
that movie,
they probably were looking at books like this. Maybe not this particular book, but maybe other books like this. But this was pretty radical for the time, I think, because there had been ghost stories passed down
around the campfire. I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
things passed down, and here, these are things that, from...
Oh, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. You got to go.
I don't want to forget that there was a whole section of sightings from, like, dogs and pets.
That had passed?
No, that the animal had seen something.
Yeah.
And
those to me are unmistakable.
I agree with that. And I know you agree with that because
had it happen. Yeah. A dog all of a sudden growling at the corner of a room, and there's nothing there. Mm-hmm. It's not moving. It's just staying there,
They really dedicate a lot of time to people's animals and their horses, of course, and
of course.
as witnesses.
I'm in Mr. Red. All Wilbur. Yeah. It's okay. I'm corny. Not that corny.
You entertained the 5 people out there.
The 5 people.
Who know what the heck you're talking
and the 2 others that just turned off the podcast. Yeah. So. No, it's a neat book. I mean, like I said, it's on Amazon. It sounds like we're plugging the book, like we're getting some sort of royalty out of it.
Well, not after you came out with, your big beefs.
Oh, my big beef. Well, no, they're not big beefs. It's just, but, the authors of the book were trying to protect the people that were sending in stuff because, they could get, they could be treated as witches or whatever.
No, I really, I did enjoy it. I particularly enjoy the instances where there were multiple witnesses. I liked those stories.
Those are great. Mm-hmm. Those are great. We got to take their words for it. But what I can tell you is a lot of these things that have happened in the book have happened to either you or me today. I don't think these things go away. I think we're hearing more about these things over time. And I suggest it. It's under $10. You could probably read it for free online if you look hard enough. But it's good to have. I just like having this is a hardcover book that I think we invested.
I like having the hardcover because it's the kind of book that you're going to not just sit in bed and read in 2 nights and then be done with it. It's one that you will pick up and put down over time. Mm-hmm.
It has a cool cover, too. It does
have a nice cover. I like the green.
The green, it has like a castle in the background. Mm-hmm. It's lightning.
Sorry, my
that's all right.
Lemonade caught me. Excuse me.
Oh, did it?
But it also makes me want to do the reading of the Proceedings book from the Society of...
Oh, yeah.
Psychic...
Something. Anyway, so what would you give this book? I'll tell you what the readers of Amazon gave it out of 5 stars. What would you say?
I think it's in the 4 range.
4
I do.
range?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, for me, personally.
I think it's in the 4 range too. Mm-hmm. It's
upper 4.
Yeah, it's an easy read, and it's fascinating, and it's traditional ghost stories from years ago, and they're still pretty scary when you read it. Some of it is, and some of it's, it's just like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then you get a good, real good one where, people are getting killed left and right. No,
I had one very, I read the chapter about the poltergeists.
Yeah.
And because it's not happening to you, and because it's in this, old time
it's separated by time.
Language, it's separating itself very much. But then I go back to, I had this one very violent poltergeist experience. It was a split second, and nobody who was there can explain it, and it was absolutely terrifying.
Wait, did you tell me about this?
Yes.
You did tell me about
The glass on the table.
Oh, didn't we say that in the last... That wasn't a poltergeist thing, though.
That's a poltergeist.
I don't think so.
I didn't tell that story on our podcast.
Are you sure? I thought you did.
No.
Oh, you didn't tell that story?
No.
Are you going to tell it?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I will say, in the moment that happened, absolutely baffling and so completely scary. And it just was a second, But when I tell strangers, because I only will tell that story.
To strangers?
Mm-hmm, to strangers. Like the girl at the U-Haul the other day when I was getting packing paper for some books.
You told it to the U-Haul person?
Because she had all this paranormal...
paraphernalia.
Out here in Long Island, it doesn't matter if you're 18 or 80.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one out there who doesn't have a tattoo. And they're communicating through their tattoos
Yeah.
about their life.
Right.
And this girl had Sasquatch and aliens and tall grays and all sorts of paranormal symbols tatted all over her skin.
So, did you say to her,
I did.
Are you into paranormal stuff?
I gave her a card.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
And then she was like, wow, I can't wait to listen. Da, da, da. And she said, have you ever had anything? I said, yes. And so I told her this one story. And
Wow.
the look of fear on this girl.
Wow.
And I felt real bad.
Did you?
I did.
Oh, she loved it. She loved it.
Yeah, she did. It's like when you scream on the roller coaster.
She probably had it tattooed,
and then you're like,
she
let's
probably
do it
had
again.
it tattooed on her body, like right as soon as you said it. Yeah, probably. I don't know.
No, she appreciated the story.
Wow, pretty neat.
It's a thrill.
Yeah, it is a thrill.
Mm-hmm. But yes, these poltergeist things do happen, and I'm sure there are other. I've never heard anybody tell me anything like that, but
right. Well, interesting.
I know for sure. We're not
Normally,
the only
I'm
one.
telling stories, and you got some good ones too. You got some doozies.
I have a couple doozies up my sleeve.
Yeah. I've seen. I've said this on a previous show, but I said I've seen an apparition when I got up.
That I have. I don't believe I've ever seen.
I've seen that, and I've seen shadow figures.
No, that I've never.
I've seen that. Not. Well, it's not like every day, but but in the past I have. And it's weird, and I've had some weird stuff.
High strangeness
happen. So I think a lot of these things kind of they kind of resonate with me because of that. So I think it's a good book to have. It's a good book to have by your bedside, so you can read a page or two.
Really spook yourself out before you knock off for a good night, 8 hours sleep.
Yeah, they're not all going to be. Some of them are just interesting, and like I said, other ones are kind of a little chilling. But I think it's a good book. Amazon, I think it was 4, so I think you're right in there. 4 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
And I would give it that. I think it's well worth it. It's not,
Or I'm sure you can get it. Check it out at Barnes and Noble. You kind of have a little, peruse it a little, and if it speaks to you, or if what we're describing to you speaks to you, then definitely.
Yeah, there's a sample online. You can sample a couple of pages online, if not the whole book. So there you go. So I think we're right in there with the 4. I would give it a little bit more than a 4. It's not To Kill a Mockingbird, but it's,
I like the fact that it's Irish and that it's it's something that is very imbued in their culture.
Yeah.
And it's something that is, over time has become appreciated.
Yeah. So there you go.
Along with the storytelling talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have a story that you would like us to say on the air here on the old podcast, you could send it to us. A lot of these things have like a little chat. You can actually chat with us.
Please do.
You could do that through some of the services that are out there for the podcast, or you could share it on our page on Facebook. And if you don't want to be identified, you could just send it to us. And what's our email? It's
back to para at cartoonerific.com.
And then we'll get it, and then give us permission to read it on the air. We'll do that.
We would love to do that.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. We'd love to hear from you. And
everybody has some kind of a story, I'm sure.
Yeah, I will tell you this. There was somebody I was working with a number of years ago. I want to say maybe 16, 17 years ago, and we were in the car together. And it was this older gentleman, and so I don't know. Somehow we came up on this subject of paranormal stuff, and he said, "Oh, I don't believe in that stuff. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in that stuff." And so I looked at him, and I said,
"You just had a feeling."
Yeah, and I said, "I think you've had at least one thing that you can't explain." And he kind of looked at me, and then he said, "Well, yeah, there's one thing." And so he told me this story, and I don't even know if he's still around. He has to be like in his 80s or 90s. But anyway, I'm gonna
Lord willing,
but I'm gonna tell it. So anyway, he said him and his wife, they have one kid, a boy, and they were going somewhere and they were looking for his shoes. And they were turning the house upside down, could not find his shoes. They were in his room, they're looking under things and closets and whatever, could not find his nice dress shoes. And so they tear the whole house apart. It's going to sound like a story that we were talking about that happened to us. But anyway, they go back into his room, and in the middle of the floor are the shoes. Right smack in the middle. As soon as they come, they see them. And
like side by side.
Side by side. Perfect.
Perfectly played. That is so.
And they could not explain how that happened. All of a sudden they were there and they were just like.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
I can relate.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
It's hard to explain something like that. And
that's a benevolent spirit just trying to help you out.
You're trying to help.
Reading your help let's help these guys out.
Yeah, let's help these guys out, or better just letting them know that there's somebody there that's looking out for them.
It's an act of kindness.
So it's an interesting story, and this is from a guy that didn't believe in any of that. So, but this happened, and he said, I couldn't explain it. And that's the problem with, there's a lot of people out there that things happen to them and they just don't want to acknowledge it. And they'll find some other reason to explain, oh, they're probably there. It was right under our nose. We never saw it. But for one person to say that, that's something. Okay, that could be, maybe, because, you've heard the stories, I was looking for this thing, it was right under my nose, I never saw it, and then all of a sudden, there it was. I was just looking too hard.
No, that's not the same as me when I go to the supermarket, and I'm looking, and I ask the store clerk, oh, could you please point out where the anchovies are? And he literally will point right in front of me.
It will be cases and cases and cases of anchovies.
Right in front of where?
Right in front of
I was
you.
like, yes, of course. That's what I should have looked in the first place.
No, but this is...
It's not the same thing. They're throwing things all over, digging in the back of closets.
Yeah, and
they're
three people looking for the shoes.
Perfectly perfectly placed there.
Yeah, they're all going... Yeah, so anyway...
Yikes.
Yikes. I have to say, okay, so I'm just going to get away from this for a second. The lemonade that you made.
Italiano Volcano alla vodka.
Yes, and you made mine with Grey Goose vodka.
I did.
And it was actually, I didn't even taste the Grey Goose, and you stuck a lot of Grey Goose in there. I know it.
I know I did.
And I'm not loopy. I'm fine, but it's
a very good lemonade that I make.
You made a very good lemonade.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm gonna toot.
Yeah, don't toot your own horn. Anyway, but you probably heard me clinking around with my mule cup over here. But no, that was really yummy. Thank you for making that.
I'm really glad that you enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was actually very refreshing.
And you got a nice, decent little dose of vodka for fun. And it fights off the scurvy.
I just want to say something. We don't time these shows. We never go out. We never set forth to time these shows for a length, but they always seem to come in around an hour.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's great, because they always seem to just fall in that range, and I think we're getting real close to that right now.
Oh, I don't want to bend off anybody's ear.
No, we don't. But anyway, True Irish Ghost Stories by Sir John D. Seymour.
San John.
Okay. And Harry L. Nelligan, which rhymes with Gilligan, but there's no island here. It's Nelligan. And so, and they, I would love to have them on the show, but I think they're long gone since they.
I'd love to have them on our show. Now listen to me. I'm clinking and clanking with my cocktail.
You
It
are.
sounds like we're in a Swiss, Alpine Valley with the cows.
Yeah.
Ricola.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, we got some good shows coming up, and we're not going to tell you what next week is. You know why?
Because something always comes up, and
Right. But we got through the show, and everybody in the audience has been waiting for the Irish Ghost Story show. I hope we didn't disappoint you.
Breath.
There you go. They're all happy. There you go.
I'm so glad that we made them happy.
Yeah, it made me happy. I'm glad we got through this.
I am too. And it was enjoyable. So thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you. And please, go to our page on Facebook, leave a comment if you really like the show. If you see one of our postings on there, and especially if you like the show, please share it to your friends on Facebook.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing, or tell people about us. Say, hey, look, I know it's paranormal stuff, but hey, they're kind of funny sometimes. So anyway, it was wonderful. I love you so much. You're so beautiful.
Thank you.
And you make these hours go real fast, which is really, really neat.
Yeah, but it's also sad. I don't want time to go fast. Anyway.
No.
Thank you again for joining us.
Yes, we'll be back next week for more of
Back to Paranormal.
Paranormal.
And I love you too.
Good night, everybody. I love you.